Okay, who are we talking to next?
Let's see. I think that Lucas has been on the line for a while. He's calling in from Brazil.
Ooh, okay, sure. And I think it might have been a while since we've talked to Lucas. Lucas wants to discuss if it's reasonable to believe in a God based on that God's perceived attributes. Lucas, you're live with Eric and V.
Hi. Hi, Eric. Hi, V.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, so is it reasonable to believe in a God based on that God's perceived attributes? Give us a little bit more info.
Yeah, give us an example.
Yeah, sure. What I'm thinking is if there's such a creature that exists in the universe that's so advanced that it can fool our senses and it can fool us in every perceivable way, how can we tell whether that's a god or if that's just some creature, or that's just someone claiming to be a god, someone that can do all the things that he claims he can do, but he he's just what he is.
That makes me think of that episode of Next Generation.
Yeah,
with the Picard. When
I was thinking about the one with the when the devil character comes into the
you're right. Yeah,
and
and there's the court case.
Yeah.
My thought was the people of the planet. One person went up to the ship and was like, "Oh, Picard is a god." So yeah, I think that what's important here is we recognize that language is what we make it, and so if we have a definition of God, those definitions can shift and change, and so you can't point at that definition and say it's set in stone. This is what it matches. It's flexible and weird that way. That said, I think that we should approach it very, very carefully. If we came across an alien that could materialize things, I would not assume that it could go back in time. If we were to encounter someone who said that they were a god, the only things that I would believe would be the things that thing demonstrated. And even then, I wouldn't necessarily believe how they did it, but just that, it happened. So I don't know. What do you think, Dee?
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, sure. I mean, here's where I might differ. If you can show me a creature that does the things that I am convinced no one can do, I will probably believe what that creature does, right? Like if they have the ability to mind control me into experiencing something myself and being convinced of it, then yeah, I'm going to believe that happened. And that's where personal experience comes in. The next step, though, is after that experience, going back to it and looking at it from a host of perspectives, getting other people's takes on things. Because it's very possible that this is like a solipsistic concept. If something convinced all of us that it was a god, but it wasn't, would we be convinced? Absolutely. Like that would happen. And if that does happen, cool, this show becomes a lot different in future seasons. But yeah, I think that this is primarily a linguistic thing. I think a god creates universes, exists before space and time, and has a personal relationship with me and makes me feel like the most special person in the world. If I met a being that could do those three things or convinced me that they could, I'd be like, yeah, okay, you're a god. What will I worship you? Will I join your religion? Maybe. Don't know. But okay, cool. You meet that criteria. There is now a god in the world. So
and a lot of people would have other criteria that would need to be met. So it just totally depends.
Exactly.
I do gotta. Never mind. I won't. I'm just being a butt.
Lucas, what are your thoughts there?
So what a question that came up right now, that came to me right now is, so if it's more of a linguistic thing, does that mean that God is not necessarily a supernatural or something outside of space and time? Or
absolutely.
It can be something completely natural and dependent on everything on that's dependent on science and
Well, so I'll give you an example. We were talking about woo in the last call, but I've had people say, well, God is just the universe, man. It's just what I call this grand collection that we see and understand, and it's everything, and it's in us, and we are God. Like, none of those, that's very poetic, but you don't need any kind of magic for that. And that person, that's what they define God to be.
right.
I just don't think
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I know, right? But here's where it annoys me. It annoys me when people use that to justify magical claims. Well, I believe in a God, but my God is so, amorphous, or it's just the universe. And then they don't challenge magic claims. I think that's where it really, really bugs me. And that's why I don't think that using that term, a God, or calling the universe God, is useful. I think it muddies the water, because you're now saying that you believe in a God. And I think that reinforces or makes other people feel more comfortable in their magical ideas of what a God is.
Well, the word God has a hidden implication, and it's context dependent and it's culturally dependent. But if you call the universe God, you're not just saying that the universe does all of the things that are normally attributed to a God. You are also suggesting that the universe deserves something, that the universe deserves some form of worship or some form of, moral consideration. Like the word God is a heavy word, and it has a lot of that unspoken context. Why are you calling the thing God? Because you think that it is worthy of your adoration, your loyalty, your worship, your consideration, whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's where it gets sticky. We can say, yes, here are the list of attributes that a God might have. This thing over here meets those attributes, but it doesn't become a God until you decide that it is worthy of that title. And that's a moral judgment, right? Or an aesthetic one. That is the part where it gets sticky, because one person might say, a God is anything that makes me feel happy. Cool. Another person might say, nothing can ever be a God, not because nothing might have those properties, but because I refuse to ever give anything that label, because I don't feel that towards anything.
Now, what sucks is I lost my train of thought. That's what sucks.
That's what sucks.
I was going to say something to the effect of the wider you get, the wider that net gets, the more difficult it is to have productive conversations.
Right.
And so the most useful thing there is ask. How do you define God? What makes something a God? Because at least when you start there, then you can have more solid footing to move forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Because, well, when I think about something that's like dependent on nature, on the laws of nature, I don't actually think of it as a God, because I think of it as just some part of this bigger thing that's the nature is, just the laws of nature, how it works, and if that's the case, I think it somewhat becomes devoid of meaning when you use the word God to describe something that's just part of something that we're part of, right? That's just something else that exists with us.
I disagree, but I do want to insist that those people exist and they do find meaning in those definitions. It's just important to meet those people where they are so that we can have conversations with them.
Yeah. Good question, though, Lucas.
No, I thank you. I agree with you, actually. You did convince me with that. Because I think it's important to have arguments and to have open discussions about these things. And it's good to meet people where they're at. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Cheers. Well, thank you for calling in.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you.